So, good morning. First year Bcom Computer Applications, Semester 2. First year Bcom Computer Applications, Semester 2, Programming in C and C++. So, we are begins with again this PPT explains about all the introduction concepts, terminology, and other concepts. So, every C program starts with hash include. What is hash include? Hash include is a directive. It is called as hash include. First start out. Hash include means it is called as preprocessor. Hash include is called as a preprocessor, or to include some header file, or to include from some header file. What is header file? Header file is nothing but it is a set of statements. Header file is nothing but it is a some set of functions. Header file is nothing but it is a some set of similar type of. Header file is nothing but it is a similar type of functions placed in one place is called as header file. So there are many types of header files like stdio.h, math.h, conio.h, string.h, like that. So stdio.h means standard input output files. What is stdio.h? Means all the standard input output functions like printf function, scanf function, and others. So as we know that printf is a standard output function. Printf is a standard output function, whereas scanf is a standard output function. So these two are generally defined in stdio.h, or a standard input output header file. So next we start with some main function. What is a main function? Main is the one and only one function. Main is the one and only one compulsory function. Main is the one and only compulsory function which includes it is a compulsory function, and it is the first function in each and every C program. Generally main programs after main we may use some braces or curly braces. So printf is another function. So there are two types of functions. First one is scanf input function, and second one is output function. First one is input function and second one is output function. Input function is called as scanf and output function is called as printf. Scanf is a standard input function, and generally it is used to input some values from the users. అంటే మనం ఏదైనా ఒక ప్రోగ్రామ్ రాసినప్పుడు ఇన్పుట్ని మనము ఎంటర్ చేయడానికి మనము ఈ స్కాన్ఎఫ్ అనే ఫంక్షన్ అనేది వాడతాం. స్కాన్ఎఫ్ ఈజ్ ద స్టాండర్డ్ ఇన్పుట్ ఫంక్షన్, అండ్ జనరల్లీ ఇట్ ఈస్ యూజ్డ్ టు accept any type of data or information from the user, whereas printf is the standard output function. It is used to display some values or display some text on the screen. సో ఈ రెండింటిని మనము scanf అండ్ printf అంటాము. అలాగే సి ప్రోగ్రామ్ ఎవ్రీ సి బై డిఫాల్ట్ సి లాంగ్వేజ్ ఈజ్ ఏ కేస్ సెన్సిటివ్ లాంగ్వేజ్. కేస్ సెన్సిటివ్ లాంగ్వేజ్ మీన్స్ ఆల్ సి ప్రోగ్రామ్స్ మస్ట్ బీ written in lowercase letters only. All C programs must be written in lowercase letters only, and every C statement should ends with a semicolon symbol. So ప్రతి C ప్రోగ్రాంలో ఉన్న ప్రతి స్టేట్మెంట్ కూడా C ప్రోగ్రాంలో ఉన్న ప్రతి స్టేట్మెంట్ కూడా మనకి ఎండింగ్లో సెమీకోలన్ తోటి ఎండ్ అవ్వాలి. సో దీస్ ఆర్ ద బేసిక్ ఫండమెంటల్ రూల్స్, అండ్ there are many types of operators and symbols, digits. They are called as tokens, C tokens, that also we discuss later. So what is C? C is a middle level language. Generally what is C? C is a middle level language, and it is developed in 1972 by Ritchie for standard C programs. So there are many types of C languages, or many versions of C languages are also there, like ANSI C and Turbo C, like that. So this is the basic structure of a C program. This is the basic structure of a C program. The first top line, preprocessors or directives are used. The second line, global declarations are used. The third line, function definitions, local function definitions are used, or local functions are used. In the fourth line, main function is used. In the fourth line, main function is used, and after the main function we may use local declarations, and after that some statements are used and semicolon. So this is the structure is called as structure of a C program. So program defined by global variables or global declarations, function definitions, and preprocessor directives, like that. And each and every C program must and must have a compulsory main function. Must and should have a compulsory main function. So main function is the first function each and every C program contains in it. So what are the different parts, or what are the different components of a C program? The first line, hash include, is called as preprocessor directive. The second line, in-text semicolon, is called as global variable declaration. And the next line, int main, is called as main function or a main definition or a main function declaration, and as two brackets. And after that, int y semicolon is local variable declaration. After that, some program statements or programming code, and each and every these are called as statements. And every statement should ends with a semicolon symbol. Every statement should ends with a semicolon symbol. And after that, we may use some statements here called printf, scanf. Printf is the standard output function. Scanf is the standard input function. Printf is generally used to display some text on the screen, whereas scanf is generally used to display scanf is generally used to accept or input some values from the users. So what are, first we begin with the preprocessor directives. What are preprocessor directives? Means generally preprocessor directives begins with a hash symbol. Instruct compiler to perform some transformation to file before compiling. Example is hash include stdio.h. Example is hash include stdio.h. So here, to define or to include some header files, we may use hash include statement. Add the header file stdio.h to this file. So what is in a header file? Header file is nothing but it is a collection of so every C program should starts with a preprocessor, that is hash symbol. So means instruct compiler to perform some transformation to file before compiling. Example, hash include stdio.h. So add the header file stdio.h to this file. Generally all the header files have an extension .h. stdio.h defines useful input and output functions. So what stdio.h file means? What is an stdio.h file means? stdio.h means standard input output file. Standard input output file, generally it contains all the basic input output functions, or all the standard input output functions required to write any C program. And declarations. What is a declaration? Declaration of variables. So how to declare variables in C language? Generally in C language, declaration of variables are done in two ways. First one is global declarations, and the second one is local declarations. Global declarations means visible throughout the program, describes data used throughout the program. Local declarations means visible within functions, visible within the functions only, describes data used only in functions. So there are two types of declarations. First one is global declarations, global variable declaration, visible throughout the program, and visible throughout global variables means visible throughout the program, and describes data used throughout the program. Next is local variable declaration. What is local variable declaration? Means they are visible within the function only and describes data used only in function. So functions, what is a function? Generally C program contains a collection of number of functions. Means C program itself contains many number of functions in it. So what is a function? What is the definition of function? A function is nothing but it is a collection of some code or program. A function is nothing but it is a collection of some code or program which is repeatedly used, and generally every function have a unique name, and every function may or may not be written some values to the program. And similarly every function have some parameters or arguments passed to it. Every function may have some parameters or arguments passed to it. That is also optional. And every function is used to return some, it may return or it may not be written some values to the main program. So header is int main, body contains in between. So next is after declaration of after writing the main, we may use body function. So what is the body function? Generally body function contained between brackets, two brackets, starts with location declarations followed by series of statements. More than one function may be defined. Functions are called invoked more than letters. So generally in C programs we may use more than one function. And we may call the same function many number of times. Within a program. What is a function? Function is nothing but it is a collection of, what is a function? Function is nothing but it is a collection of some statements, a collection of some code, or a collection of some lines or some programs which are repeatedly used and which are repeatedly called for within a main function. So what is a main function? What is the purpose of using main function in a C program? So every program has one function. Every program generally. So main function. What is main function? So every C program has one main function. It is a compulsory function and mandatory function. So every C program should have main function. So what is the header for main? Means int main. So what is the header of main function? Int main. Program is the sequence of statements between program. What is a program? A program is nothing but it is a sequence of statements written in between two braces following main. Statements are executed one at a time from the one immediately following to main to the before closing bracket. So all the statements written one by one after the main function till it reaches the closing of the program or end of the program, that is curly bracket. So what is the main code or main program? Where the main code or main program written is in between two brackets, after the main. So after the main function we may write the program or code in between two braces. Next, comments. What are comments? Comments are remarks. Comments are also called as remarks. So what is a comment? Comment is nothing but some text. It is some text written in between slash star and star slash. So what are comments? Comments are generally written in between the symbols slash star and star slash. slash star and star slash. Generally comments are used to document the code for the human reader. So what are the purpose of using comments? Means comments are generally used to write some documentation, to include some documentation for the program code for human being purpose, or for helping humans while writing the code. Generally comments are ignored by compilers, not part of the program. So whenever in an generally the C compilers are ignored the comments, any comments written by the you. So generally C programs or C compilers are ignored the comments written by the programmer. So care should be taken while writing the comments. Why? Because the matches of slash star and star slash should be written very carefully. So comment examples. So how to write comments in C program. So hash include stdio.h, hash include stdio.h, slash star star slash int main brackets, some statements bracket close. So first bracket is used for beginning of the program, and slash last bracket is used for end of the program. So documentation. What is documentation? Global, module, function. So the documentation is generally written at various levels. We may write documentation of C programs at various levels, like global, middle, module wise documentation, function wise documentation, like that. Naming and documentation for using name variables, like that. So next we may discuss about syntax of C program. Next we discuss about syntax of C program. So what is the syntax of C, and how to write, how to use C language, like that. So what is the syntax? Syntax is nothing but rules that define C language, specify which tokens are valid, also indicate the expected order of tokens. Some types of tokens are like reserved words or keywords, include printf, int, like that. Identifiers or variables like x, y, z, like that. Literal constants, 5 single quotes here, like that. Punctuation symbols like single bracket, bracket close, bracket open, semicolon, less than, greater than, hash, like that. So all these are called as tokens. So what are tokens? So what are tokens? Tokens are nothing but it is a collection of some keywords, or a collection of some parts of a C program. Generally tokens contains reserved words or keywords, include printf. What are reserved words or keywords? Means these words are generally have some special meaning to the program and compiler, and they can't be used as a variable in a regular program, like include, printf, int, like that. Identifiers are variables. So what are identifiers or variables? Then like used like x, comma y, comma a, comma b, comma c, like that. Literal constants or literal constants. Generally constants, what are variables and what are constants? So constants are fixed values. Generally constants are used for fixed values. They can't change their value during program execution. There are many types of constants are available, like numeric constants, string constants, like that. And identifiers are also called as variables. So punctuations or punctuation symbols. There are many special operators, there are many special symbols are used for punctuation purpose, like brackets, semicolon, greater than, square brackets, hash, like that. All these are special symbols used for writing C programs, and they have some specific predefined meaning used for it. So identifier. So we start one by one. We discuss one by one literals here. So we start with identifier. Identifier is also called as a variable. Identifier are also called as a variable. What is a variable or identifier? Names used for objects in C. So generally we may use variables or we may use identifiers in programs for naming purpose. Generally each identifiers have some names, so used some names or used some names. And so what are the different rules, what are the different rules and regulations for forming identifiers or variables? So what are the rules and regulations for forming identifiers or variables in C language? So first, every identifier or variable should start with an alphabet. So every identifier or a variable should start with an alphabet or a character, an alphabet or a character, either it may be small a to z or a capital A to z or underscore. So similarly, every identifier or variable has only alphabetic digit underscore characters. So any identifier or any identifier or variable has only should have only alphabets, digits, underscores, like that. And first 31 characters are ignored. So maximum length of the identifier or variable is 31 characters. So what is the maximum length of an identifier or variable is 31 characters. And cannot duplicate reserved words, means identifiers cannot be used. Identifier generally identifiers or variables or cannot be used as a reserved words, cannot be used reserved words or keywords. So we should take care about forming identifiers or variables, so that we should choose them like no identifier should or no identifier have chosen as a reserved word or a keyword. So it should not be a, generally variable or identifier should not be a reserved word or keyword. So what are reserved words or keywords? Reserved words means they are having some specific meaning. Generally all reserved words have some specific meaning to them, or they are a predefined meaning to them. We can't use as a regular variable. And case matters or case sensitive matters means generally all identifiers are keywords. All identifiers or keywords should be written in case letters only, means lowercase letters only, means no uppercase letters should be used as a identifier or a variable. Reserved words. So what are reserved words or keywords? What are reserved words or keywords? So identifiers that already have meaning in C. So generally reserved words or keywords in C language have some specific meaning. Generally reserved words and keywords have some specific meaning or purpose, so that we can't use them as a regular variable. So identifiers that already have meaning in C. So what are examples for reserved words or keywords are include main, printf, scanf, if, else, etc. So all these are called as reserved words or keywords, and they have some specific predefined meaning, so that we can't be used as a regular variable. So what are the valid examples? What are the different types or different examples for valid or invalid identifiers? So valid identifiers and invalid identifiers. So here in the left side we may describe about all the valid identifiers. The right side we may give some invalid identifiers. So what are invalid identifiers? Means an identifier a variable started with a constant, it is a invalid identifier. No spaces are allowed. and it should start with some alphabet only, no uppercase characters are allowed, like that. Program execution. So how to execute a C program, how to run, execute and compile a C program. So what are variables? So what are variables? Variables are generally named memory locations. So in a program, if you use any type of memory location, if you generally when you use or refer any memory location by giving some name, that name is called as a variable. Variables declared in global or local declaration. Generally, variables are two types. First one is global variables and second one is local variables. So global variables are available throughout the program. Whereas local variables are available within the program or within the function. So what is the difference? What are the different types of variables? There are two types of variables are used, global variable and local variable. Global variables can be accessed. Generally, global variables are generally accessible from anywhere in a program, and they can be available throughout the global and local variables are defined within a program only. Generally, local variables are declared within a program only, and they can be available within declared and defined and declared within a inside a program only, program definition only. Syntax, type, name. So what are the how to create a variable, how to create variables in C language, So syntax is generally type space name. Example is int space sum. Float space avg, char space dummy. So what is the type? Data type. As we already discussed in the previous classes, what is a type? Type is nothing but it is a data type. So various different data types are used. So what is how to create variable, how to create and use variables? The syntax is type space name, data type space name, like int space sum, float space avg, char space dummy, like that. So variable types. So variable type means data types. Indicates how much memory to set aside for the variable. Also determines how that space will be interpreted. Basic types are char, int, float. Specify amount of space bytes to set aside. What can be stored in that space? What operations can be performed? So variable types means data types. So as we already discussed about data types, so there are different types of data types are used, like char, int, float, like that. Each data type is having its own space or bytes to occupy, and generally data types are variable types, or data types are used to store different types of memories with them. So variable name. So what are the variables? What are the rules and regulations while creating or while using variable names? Legal identifier, not a reserved word, must be unique, not used before. Variable names in functions considered to be qualified by the function. Variable x in function main is different from x in function x. So there are some rules and regulations to be followed and to be used while framing variable names. So first rule is variable name should not be a reserved word or a keyword, and it should be unique, and it should not be used before, and it should be used in functions as well as it should be used in main means the same variable name can be used in function as well as in the main also. Next, multiple variable declaration. So if you want to define and declare multiple variables, you may use a comma operator. To separate from one variable to another variable. So example is, while writing, if you want to create some three integer variables x, y, z, instead of writing int x semicolon, int y semicolon, int z semicolon, you may write in a single line like int space x comma y comma z, int space x comma y comma z semicolon. So this is the shortest way to create multiple variables or multiple variable declarations. So next is initialization, variable initialization. So variable, there are two parts or components in variable while using variable. So first one is variable definition, variable declaration. Second one is variable initialization, variable definition and variable initialization. So in the first part, the variable definition or variable declaration, you may use the variables which are used in program by using some data types. Example is int space x comma y comma z semicolon. After that, initialize, you may need to initialize them. So how to initialize a variable? By some constant. So giving a variable an initial value, variables not necessarily initialized when declared values unpredictable garbage can initialize in declaration. So syntax is type, data type or type name is equals to some value. So int, so syntax is how to declare and initialize, how to define and declare and initialize variables, means the syntax is variable data type space name is equals to value semicolon. So int space x is equals to 0. Here there are two components or parts there. First one is you initially define a variable x as an integer, define a variable x as an integer, and also at the same time you initialize it with 0. So this part is called as a definition and declaration and definition and initialization of a variable. Next is initialization values. So literal constants. Literal means generally there are number of constants, as we know that there are number of constants are available, like string constant, character constant, string constant, numeric constant, like that. Literal constants, token representing a value, like 5 representing the integer, an expression, function call, the value however specified must be of the character type. So multiple declaration initialization means can provide one value for variables initialized in one statement. For example, if we use int space x comma y comma z is equals to 0, each variable declared and then initialized with a value. So types, so type means data types. So what are the different data types? Data types is a compulsory essay type question. Data type is the compulsory essay type question from UNIT-1. So data types. So what are the data types? Data type is a compulsory essay type question from UNIT-1. So what are different types of data types? So set of possible values, defined sizes, how values stored, interpreted, operations that can be performed on those possible values. Data types are associated with objects in C. So these are the different types of data types available in C language. So atomic types cannot be broken down. So void, char, int, float, double. Second one is derived types. So basically there are two types, atomic types and derived types. Atomic types means void, char, int, float, double. Derived types means composed of other types. Derived types means composed of other types. Atomic types means void, char, int, float, double. So literal constants. So constants, what are constants? Constants are as we know that different types of constants are available. Sequences of characters token that corresponding to values from the type. So minus 35 is the integer minus 35. So there are many types of constants are there: integer constants, string constants, character constants, literal constants, numeric constants, like that. So generally constants are used to initialize variables. Generally constants are used to initialize variables and phenomena. So we discuss one by one data types here. First one is void data type. What is a void data type? Void means nothing. Void means nothing, or null data type. Void means nothing or null data type. So type name is equals to void. Possible values are none. Operations none. Useful as a placeholder. So next is integer type. Generally void data types are used along with functions only. Void data types are used along with functions only. So next data type is integer data type. So what is an integer data type? Integer data types are different types. Generally it is used to store, define and declare. Generally they are used to store and define and declare integral values or whole numbers. So type names, there are two different types of integer data types like int, short int, long int, etc. So possible values means whole numbers within given range, and operations means arithmetic. Generally integer data types or integer types are used to perform arithmetic operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication and others. So what are the different types of integer data types or values? So short int, long int. Basically three types of integer data types are used. First one is short int. Second one is int. Third one is long int. Generally short int occupies 2 bytes or 16 bits. The range of short int is minus 32,7682 plus 32,767. And second one is int. Int data type occupies 4 bytes, and the range general 4 bytes. 4 bytes means 4 into 8, 32 bits. So the range of integer data type is minus 21474, like that, and plus. Next is long int. Long int means it is also 4 bytes. It occupies also 4 bytes. Means 32 bits. From minus 214 to plus 214. So why limited means with a fixed number of bits. Only a certain number of possible patterns. 16 bits means 65536 possible patterns. And overflow means attempt to store a value too large in a variable. Unsigned int. So basically numbers are two types. Signed integers. Basically integer data types are two types again. So what are the fundamental types of integers? Short int, long int. Short int, long int. Short int occupies 2 bytes. Int occupies 4 bytes. Long int occupies 4 bytes. Similarly, these are two types: signed int and unsigned int. Signed and unsigned integers. So type means signed int. Type means signed int, no negative values. Unsigned int means possible values are 0 to 65536. Representation means binary number. So unsigned integer values, possible values of unsigned integer values are from 0 to 65536. Generally unsigned integers are positive numbers, no negative values. Type unsigned int. So integer literal constants. So what are integer literal constants? Means syntax: one or more digits, optional leading plus or minus, optional 1 or L at the end of the long, optional U or capital U for unsigned. Examples. So floating point types. What are floating point types? Floating point means real numbers. Floating point numbers are also called as real numbers or decimal numbers, like that. Floating point numbers are also called as real numbers or decimal numbers. Generally, these floating point type names are float, double, and long double. So, what are the different types of floating point numbers? There are different types of floating point numbers are available, like float, double, and long double. So, what is a real number or floating point number? Any number with a decimal point. Any number with a decimal point is called as a floating point number or double number. Generally, floating point numbers or real numbers are three types: float, and double, and long double. Floating point numbers or real numbers are three types. First one is float, second one is double, third one is long double. So possible values are floating point numbers. So operations generally where they can be used is means generally they can be used at arithmetic operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and divisions, like that. So again, floating point representation or floating point data types numbers are three types, as we already told. First one is float, second one is double, third one is long double. Float means it occupies 4 bytes. Float means it occupies 4 bytes or 32 bits. Double means 8 bytes. Double means 8 bytes or 64 bits. Long double means 10 bytes or 80 bits. So floating point numbers are three types: float, double, long double. Float occupies 4 bytes or 32 bits. Double occupies 8 bytes or 64 bits. Long double occupies 10 bytes or 80 bits. So representation. So how to represent these floating point numbers means generally they can be represented with magnitude, some number of bits, plus exponent, remember of bits. So for example, 3.26 into 10 power 4, 3.26 into 10 power 4, that is equivalent to 32,600. So this type of representation is called as magnitude representation. So generally floating points are represented with magnitude or decimal representation. So limitations. So what are floating point limitations? Maximum, minimum exponents. Next, so first data type is fundamental data type. First one is integer data type. Second one is floating point data type. Third one is character data type. Third data type is character data type. Third data type is character data type. So type name is going to char. Possible values, keys that can be typed at the keyboard. Representation, each character assigned a value, ASCII value 8 bits. A binary number 65. Character literals, single keystroke between code character. Examples: single code, capital A, capital B, small a, small b. Some special characters are slash 0, null character. Null string character is represented with single quotes, within quotes, slash 0. Tab character, it is slash t. New line character, it is slash n. Single quote character, it is slash double quote, backslash character, double quotes. String literals. So how to use or how to create string literals or string constants means no string type. No string type means more letter. Conditional between double quotes characters. Examples: double quotes. Generally string literals or string characters are represented with double quotes, or null string means anything in between double string. Constants, as we already discussed in the previous classes, constants are generally fixed values. Constants are generally fixed values or fixed constants. So there are many types of constants